My name is Robert, and at 58 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at me. I had worked hard my entire adult life, built a modest career as an accountant, married my college sweetheart Margaret, and raised two wonderful children, but nothing prepared me for the phone call I received one ordinary Tuesday morning that would change everything. The call came from my father's lawyer. Dad had passed away 3 months earlier at the age of 85, and we were still processing the estate. What the lawyer told me that day made my coffee taste bitter in my mouth. "Robert, I'm calling about the trust your father established," Mr. Henderson said in his professional tone. "It appears there's been some confusion. The vacation property in Vermont and the associated trust fund were designated exclusively for your sister Patricia." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. Margaret looked up from her crossword puzzle, concern creasing her forehead. "Exclusively?" I repeated slowly. "Are you certain?" "Yes, I have the documents right here. Your father created this trust 5 years ago. Patricia is the sole beneficiary for the Vermont property and the maintenance fund attached to it." After I hung up, Margaret came over and placed her hand on my shoulder. We had been married for 33 years, and she could read me like a book. "What is it, honey?" I explained what the lawyer had told me. Margaret's expression shifted from concern to something harder to define. She had always been diplomatic about my relationship with my sister, but I knew she had opinions she kept to herself out of respect for me. Patricia was my younger sister by 4 years. At 54, she had carved out a comfortable life as a real estate agent in Boston. She had married well, to a successful surgeon named Dr. Richard Matthews, and they had 2 grown children who were both in professional careers. Patricia had always been what you might call high maintenance. Even as children, she had been Dad's favorite, though I had tried not to let it bother me. The Vermont vacation home had been in our family for 27 years. Dad had bought it as a summer retreat, a beautiful 4-bedroom lodge nestled in the mountains with a view that could take your breath away. Over the years, it had become the gathering place for our extended family, the location of countless memories and traditions. Here's what made my stomach turn. For the past 12 years, I had been paying half of everything. The property taxes, the utilities, the maintenance, the repairs when the roof leaked, the new furnace 3 years ago, the dock repairs after the storm. Patricia and I had split everything down the middle because that's what Dad had asked us to do. He said it was only fair since we both used the property. Except now I discovered it wasn't both of ours at all. It had been solely Patricia's for the last 5 years, and nobody had bothered to tell me. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time, just thinking. Margaret made us fresh coffee and sat with me, not pushing, just being present the way she had learned to do over 3 decades of marriage. "Did you have any idea?" she finally asked. I shook my head. None. Dad never said a word. Patricia never said anything either. "She knew," Margaret said quietly. She had to have known. That was the part that hurt most. Not just that Dad had made this decision, though that stung plenty, but that Patricia had known for 5 years and had let me keep paying half of everything without saying a word. I picked up my phone and called my sister. "Robbie," she answered cheerfully. She was the only person who still called me that childhood nickname. "What's going on?" "Patricia, I just got off the phone with Mr. Henderson." There was a pause, just a fraction of a second too long. "Oh? About the trust. About the Vermont house." Another pause. "What about it? Were you planning to tell me that Dad left it entirely to you?" "I've been paying for a property that's been solely yours for the past 5 years." "Robbie, it's not like that." "Then what is it like, Patricia? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I've been funding your vacation home while you knew full well it belonged only to you." She sighed, and I could hear the defensiveness creeping into her voice. Dad made his decision. I didn't think it was my place to say anything. And besides, you use the house too. It's still a family property. A family property that you own exclusively. That I've been maintaining and paying for without knowing I had no stake in it whatsoever. "You're being dramatic," Patricia said, her tone cooling. "It's not that big a deal. We're family." That word, family, coming from her mouth at that moment felt like a slap. Family is supposed to mean honesty. Family is supposed to mean fairness. "How much have I paid over the past 5 years?" I asked, already doing rough calculations in my head. "I don't know, Robbie. I don't keep track of every little thing." "I do, because I'm an accountant, Patricia. It's approximately $43,000. That's what I've paid for a house that I now discover I have no ownership in. Well, what do you want me to do about it? Her voice had taken on that edge I remembered from childhood, the tone she used when she was cornered but refused to admit fault. I want you to acknowledge that this wasn't right, that you should have told me, life isn't always fair, Robert. Dad made his choice. Maybe if you had visited him more, spent more time with him, things would have been different. That one hurt. I had visited Dad regularly, called him twice a week, handled his finances when his eyesight started failing, but Patricia had always been his golden child, and apparently even death hadn't changed that dynamic. I'm done paying for the Vermont house, I said calmly. Effective immediately. You can't just stop. We have bills due next month. Those are your bills, Patricia. Your house, your bills. I'm sure Richard can cover them. This is so selfish of you, she snapped. After everything Mom and Dad did for you. I almost laughed at that. Almost. Goodbye, Patricia. I hung up before she could say anything else. Margaret reached across the table and took my hand. How do you feel? Tired, I admitted. Just really tired. The following days were strange. I felt like I was grieving all over again. Not just for Dad, but for the relationship with my sister I thought we had. Every time my phone rang, I half expected it to be Patricia calling to apologize, to explain, to make things right. But that call never came. Instead, about 2 weeks later, I got a series of text messages. The first one read, "The property taxes are due and I need your half." I didn't respond. The second one, "An hour later, Robert, this is serious. If we don't pay, there will be penalties." I still didn't respond. The third one came that evening. "I can't believe you're doing this. You're being incredibly immature." I blocked her number after that. Margaret said I was well within my rights, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She knew what it cost me to cut off communication with my only sibling. A month passed. Then I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Robert, this is Richard, my brother-in-law." We had always gotten along reasonably well, though we were never close. He was calling from the hospital between surgeries. I could hear the bustle in the background. "Richard, look, I'm calling about this situation with Patricia and the Vermont house." "There's no situation," I said. "The house is hers. She can handle it." "I understand you're upset," Richard said, and he actually sounded sympathetic. "Patricia told me what happened about the trust. I didn't know either, for what it's worth." That surprised me. "She didn't tell you?" "No. She's always handled the Vermont property finances separately. I found out about all this when the property tax bill came and she had a meltdown about it." "I'm not paying for a house that isn't mine, Richard. I get it, I really do. And between you and me, I think Dad's decision was unfair. But, Robert, Patricia is my wife. And I'm asking you to reconsider. Not for her sake, but for the sake of your relationship. Money comes and goes, but family is forever." I appreciated that Richard was trying, but his words rang hollow. Family should have told me the truth 5 years ago. "You're right," he said simply. "You are absolutely right. What can I do to make this better?" That question caught me off guard. Richard wasn't known for backing down or admitting fault by proxy. "I honestly don't know. Would it help if Patricia paid you back? For the 5 years? Can she afford that?" Richard was quiet for a moment. "Not easily, no. We've had some unexpected expenses. Richard Jr.'s wedding last year cost more than we planned, and we're helping Emily with her student loans from medical school. But we could work out a payment plan." "I don't want her money," I said, and realized as I said it that it was true. I just wanted honesty. I wanted to be treated like I mattered. "You do matter, Robert. Patricia is just scared right now. She's always defined herself by what Dad thought of her, and I think on some level she knows this trust situation proves something she doesn't want to face." "What's that?" "That maybe she wasn't as special as she always believed. That maybe Dad's favoritism wasn't about her being better, but about him being flawed." That was surprisingly insightful. "I appreciate you calling, Richard. But this is between Patricia and me." "Fair enough. But Robert, think about the long game here. In 10 years, 20 years, what will you regret more? Losing $43,000 or losing your sister?" After we hung up, I sat with that question for a long time. Margaret found me in my study that evening staring at old photo albums. There were pictures of Patricia and me as children, building sandcastles at the beach, dressed up for Halloween, opening Christmas presents. There were pictures from the Vermont house, from those early years before the dynamics got complicated. Penny for your thoughts? Margaret asked. Richard called, and he asked me what I'd regret more in 20 years. The money or losing Patricia? Margaret sat down beside me, looking at the photos. What did you tell him? I didn't have an answer. Do you think I'm being stubborn? She considered the question carefully, the way she always did before offering her opinion on something important. I think you have every right to be hurt and angry. What Patricia did, what your father did, it wasn't okay. But I also think Richard has a point about regret. So you think I should just forget about it? Go back to paying for her house? No, Margaret said firmly. I don't think that at all. I think you should decide what you actually want out of this situation. Is it the money? Is it an apology? Is it acknowledgement? Because right now, you're punishing Patricia, which is understandable, but it's not getting you closer to any resolution. I want her to admit she was wrong. Then tell her that. Have a real conversation, not over text, not in anger. Sit down with her and tell her exactly how this made you feel. I knew Margaret was right, even if I didn't want to admit it. The next morning, I unblocked Patricia's number and sent her a text. We need to talk, face to face. Are you willing to meet me? Her response came quickly. Yes. When and where? We agreed to meet at a diner halfway between our homes, a neutral location where neither of us had the home field advantage. It was a Saturday morning, and the place was busy with weekend breakfast crowds. Patricia was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking smaller somehow than I remembered. She had aged in the years since I'd really looked at her. There were lines around her eyes, gray threading through her auburn hair that she hadn't bothered to color. She looked tired. Hi, Robbie, she said softly as I slid into the booth across from her. Patricia. A waitress came by and we both ordered coffee, going through the mundane ritual of cream and sugar while avoiding eye contact. When she left, an uncomfortable silence settled over our table. Patricia spoke first. I'm sorry, 2 words. Simple. But the way she said them, with genuine remorse, made me pause. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the trust. I should have. I knew it was wrong and I did it anyway. Why? I asked. It was the question that had been haunting me. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, not drinking, just holding it. Because I was ashamed. Of what? Of what it meant. Dad setting up that trust just for me, it was like this validation I'd been chasing my whole life. Proof that I was the special one, the one he really loved. And if I told you about it, I'd have to acknowledge how messed up that was. How unfair. So you took my money instead. She flinched. Yes, and it was wrong. Every time you sent me your half of the bills, I felt guilty. But I told myself it was okay because you were using the house too. And it was family property, and all these other rationalizations. But the truth is, I was being selfish and dishonest. I hadn't expected this. I'd prepared myself for defensiveness, for justifications, for another fight, not for this raw honesty. Richard called me, I said, I know. He told me he was going to. I was angry at him for interfering, but he was right to do it. He suggested you could pay me back. Patricia nodded. I can. It will take time, but I can do it. Richard and I talked about it. We can probably manage about $700 a month if we cut back on some things. That would take 5 years. I know. But Robert, I want to make this right. Not just the money, but us. I don't want to lose my brother over this. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. Patricia had always worn confidence like armor, never letting anyone see her doubt or fear. But sitting across from me now was just a woman who had made a mistake and was trying to own it. I don't care about the money, I said. Well, I do, but that's not what this is really about. Then what is it about? Respect. Being treated like I matter, like my time and effort and contributions have value. They do, Patricia said quickly. They absolutely do. Then why did it take Dad dying and me finding out accidentally for this truth to come to light? She didn't have a good answer for that. Because I'm flawed, Robbie. Because I let my need for Dad's approval turn me into someone who could justify lying to my own brother. Because I'm not as good a person as I want to believe I am. That admission hung between us. The diner noise, the clatter of dishes and murmur of conversations, faded into background static. I want a real apology, I said. Not just I'm sorry, but acknowledgement of exactly what you did wrong and how it affected me. Patricia nodded, took a breath, and looked me directly in the eyes. Robert, I knowingly deceived you for 5 years about the ownership of the Vermont property. I let you pay for taxes, maintenance, and utilities on a house that I knew belonged solely to me. I prioritized my own comfort and financial benefit over honesty and fairness to you. I took advantage of your trust and your generosity. What I did was wrong, it was hurtful, and it damaged our relationship. You deserved better from me, and I failed you as a sister. I'm truly deeply sorry. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I hadn't realized was there. Thank you. What do you want to happen now? She asked. With the house, with us, with everything? I had thought about this extensively over the past weeks. I don't want your money. I don't want a payment plan. What I want is for you to take full responsibility for the Vermont house going forward. All costs, all decisions, all maintenance. It's yours, so own it completely. Okay, she said quietly. And I want us to rebuild trust. But that takes time, Patricia. You can't lie to someone for 5 years and expect things to go back to normal after one conversation. I understand. What can I do? Be honest with me, about everything. If something is bothering you, say it. If you disagree with me, tell me. No more hiding behind politeness or family obligation. Real honesty. I can do that, she said. And Robbie, for what it's worth, I think Dad made a mistake with the trust. I think he tried to fix something broken between us by giving me the house, but all he did was make it worse. What was broken? She smiled sadly. He always worried I was fragile, that I needed more support, more reassurance. You were always the strong one, the responsible one. He thought he was helping me, but really he was just feeding into my worst impulses. That was probably the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard Patricia say. We talked for another hour, working through years of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding. It wasn't a miracle cure. One conversation couldn't undo decades of family dynamics. But it was a start. As we were leaving, Patricia touched my arm. Can I still call you Robbie? I smiled despite myself. Yeah, you can still call me Robbie. Over the following months, things slowly improved between Patricia and me. She sent me monthly updates about the Vermont house. Not asking for money, but just keeping me informed. She paid for a new dock out of her own pocket. When the furnace needed service, she handled it herself. And gradually, carefully, we started talking about things beyond just the house situation. Real conversations about our lives, our marriages, our fears about getting older. Patricia admitted she was terrified of retirement, of losing her identity as a successful real estate agent. I told her about my own anxieties about health issues and whether Margaret and I had saved enough. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, old patterns trying to reassert themselves. But we were trying, and that meant something. Margaret noticed the change. You seem lighter, she observed one evening as we sat on our back porch, watching the sunset. I feel lighter, I admitted. It's like I've been carrying around this weight of resentment and anger, and finally putting it down. I'm proud of you, she said. For standing up for yourself, but also for being willing to forgive. I'm not sure I've completely forgiven yet, I said honestly, but I'm working on it. That's all any of us can do. Margaret said, taking my hand. Work on it one day at a time. About 8 months after that initial conversation in the diner, Patricia called me with an unusual request. Robbie, I want to do something, but I need your blessing first. What's that? I want to sell the Vermont house. That surprised me. Really? I thought you loved that place. I do, but it's also this symbol of everything that went wrong between us. And honestly, it's expensive to maintain, and Richard and I aren't getting any younger. We'd rather have the money to travel, to do things we've always talked about doing. Then sell it, I said. You don't need my permission. Actually, I kind of do, because if I sell it, I want to split the proceeds with you. 50-50, I was stunned. Patricia, that's not necessary. Yes, it is. It's not about the law or the trust or what Dad intended. It's about what's right. That house should have been both of ours all along. So I want to make it right, even if it's after the fact. That's a significant amount of money, I know. And I want you to have half of it. Please, Robbie, let me do this. I talked it over with Margaret that night. She thought I should accept that it was Patricia's way of truly making amends, and refusing might actually hurt more than it helped. So I told Patricia yes, The house sold 6 months later for a considerable sum. True to her word, Patricia split it right down the middle. She didn't deduct the money I'd paid over those 5 years. She didn't try to keep more for herself. Clean 50-50 split. When the check arrived, I stared at it for a long time. It represented more than money. It represented Patricia choosing to do the right thing even when she didn't have to, even when it cost her significantly. I called her that evening. "I got the check." "Good," she said. "Robert, I want you to know something. This isn't about buying your forgiveness or erasing what I did. What happened happened, and I have to live with that. But I needed to do this for me, to be able to look at myself in the mirror and feel like I'm the person I want to be." "I understand," I said. "And Patricia, thank you, not just for the money but for everything. For being willing to be honest, to be vulnerable, to work on this. You're my brother," she said simply. "You're the only sibling I have. That means something." "Yeah," I agreed. "It does." As I sit here telling you this story at 60 years old, Patricia and I talk regularly. We'll never have a perfect relationship. The scars from those years of dishonesty don't completely disappear. But we have something real now, something built on honesty and mutual respect rather than obligation and pretense. I think about Dad sometimes, about what he was trying to accomplish with that trust. Maybe he really did think he was helping Patricia. Maybe he thought I was strong enough not to need that kind of tangible proof of his love. He was wrong, of course. Everyone needs to feel valued, needs to feel like they matter. But I also think about what I learned through all of this. That family relationships are complicated. That people can hurt you deeply and still deserve a chance at redemption if they're willing to do the work. That sometimes standing up for yourself is the most loving thing you can do. For yourself and for the other person. Margaret says I'm more at peace now than I was before all this happened. She might be right. There's something clarifying about having everything out in the open. About not carrying around unspoken resentments and hidden truths. Patricia and I have started a new tradition. Once a month, we meet for breakfast at that same diner where we had our breakthrough conversation. We talk about life, about our adult children, about the strange experience of getting older and watching our bodies and minds change. Sometimes we disagree, sometimes old tensions surface, but we work through it, in real time, with honesty. Last month, Patricia told me something that struck me. "You know what the saddest part of all this was?" she asked. "I spent so many years trying to be Dad's favorite, trying to earn his special love. And in the end, all it did was almost cost me my brother. The person I should have been prioritizing all along. We both could have done better," I said. "I let resentment build instead of addressing things directly. We were both playing into unhealthy patterns. Maybe," she acknowledged, "but I was the one who lied. That's on me." The ability to have these conversations, to be honest without destroying each other, that's what I value most now. More than any property or money or even the time we lost. I often think about what Richard said in that phone call, about what I would regret more in 20 years. He was right to push me on that question. Because life is short and family is complicated, and holding on to anger ultimately hurts us more than it hurts anyone else. But I also don't regret standing up for myself. That was necessary. Patricia needed to face real consequences for her actions. Without that, without me drawing a line and saying this isn't okay, nothing would have changed. She would have kept taking advantage, and I would have kept enabling it while growing more and more resentful. So I guess what I learned is that you can stand firm in your boundaries while still leaving the door open for reconciliation. You can refuse to be taken advantage of while still offering grace to someone who genuinely wants to change. These things aren't mutually exclusive. Margaret and I recently celebrated our 34th wedding anniversary. As we sat at dinner, she raised her glass to me. "To my husband," she said, "who taught me that you can be strong and kind at the same time." I think that's the lesson in all of this. Strength without kindness is just cruelty. Kindness without strength is just enabling. But when you can hold both together, when you can be firm about your worth while still seeing the humanity in the other person, that's when real healing becomes possible. Patricia and her family, Margaret and I, we're planning a vacation together next summer. Nothing fancy, just a week at the beach, making new memories. There's a part of me that's nervous about it, worried that old dynamics might resurface, but there's a bigger part that's hopeful, that believes we're building something better than what we had before. Because that's the thing about relationships, especially family relationships. They're not static. They're always evolving, always changing. The question is whether you're willing to do the work to move them in a positive direction. I'm grateful I did that work. I'm grateful Patricia did too. And I'm especially grateful for Margaret, who stood by me through all of it, who gave me the space to be angry while also gently pushing me toward forgiveness. As I look ahead to whatever years I have left, I feel fortunate. Fortunate to have repaired something I thought might be permanently broken. Fortunate to have learned these lessons while there's still time to apply them. Fortunate to understand finally that being right matters less than being connected. The Vermont house is gone now, but the family it was meant to serve is stronger than ever. Sometimes you have to lose something to gain what really matters, and that, I suppose, is the real inheritance Dad left us. Not the property or the money, but the opportunity to figure out what kind of family we wanted to be. We chose honesty, we chose effort, we chose each other. That choice, more than any trust fund, is what I hope to pass down to my own children. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about family, forgiveness, and the wisdom that comes with age. And please, leave a comment below sharing your own experiences with family challenges and reconciliation. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.